What's going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning in. I want to give you my thanks if you're here. Uh, you could be anywhere else in the world, but you're here with me, and I appreciate that. So I did my horror sequels, and I thought, okay, a lot of the horror sequels are either famous or infamous. They're either known as being just as good, if not better than the original. You think like Aliens, or you think something like Friday the 13th Part 2, Final Destination 2. There are ones that are, infamously bad. Exorcist 2 comes to mind. Um, and the other ones are really good, but most people don't talk about. So I wanted to look at 10 sequels that I think are really good, maybe underrated, maybe underseen, or maybe kind of just people forgot about. The first one I'll talk about is a somewhat recent one, but this movie seemed to come and go, and not get much love or attention or praise upon its release, and doesn't seem to be talked about. At least I don't hear it talked about too often. And that's Doctor Sleep. The, of course, sequel to The Shining. I thought this movie was amazing. I thought this movie was just as good, if not better, than The Shining. I know that's a bold statement, but I have to say how I feel. I think Ewan McGregor's performance as a adult Danny was breathtaking. I mean, that's the best word I can use. And this movie was oddly disturbing. Like, obviously, when you're dealing with children, you're dealing with children um, being, losing their lives. That's a heavy subject. But this one, I mean, that scene with that baseball kid, that was one of the most disturbing things. I'm not gonna lie. When I saw that on my DVD, I had to fast forward that. That was tough to watch. And what made it even tougher was it wasn't like they showed it and then they panned or they cut away. They prolonged the shit out of that scene. So, you know, this movie was it was so well made. It was so amazing. The characters, I love the characters. This was just such a great movie, and it seemed like people forgot about it. But I think this is considering, despite the failure of Kubrick to give a good adaptation, which he didn't. I mean, unbiasedly, he did not do that. However, what he did do was he made a horror classic in his own right. It was just one of the most terrible adaptations ever put to film. But in turn, he made a horror classic. And this is a worthy successor. And I love the fact that Mike Flanagan, when he made this, he talked to Mr. King and said, "Hey, listen, I want to be faithful to your book, but I also want to be faithful to Mr. Kubrick's film because a lot of people know the film more than they know the book, and obviously the two are nothing alike, except the name and just basic characters. But I mean, they could not be more different." And Mr. King was respectful and said, "Okay, okay, have a nice compromise." And I think he did an amazing job. But Doctor Sleep is a film I think doesn't get nearly enough praise. Next, Jeepers Creepers 2. It's hard for me to sit here and try to say, don't worry about the director. I'm not going to attempt to do that for two reasons. One, I was abused as a child. Two, I worked law enforcement for 5 years. So I have a bias. And I'm not saying that if I can get over it, you should too. Everyone's trauma is different. But I saw this movie when I was a kid. Before I knew anything about the director, if I knew about his past, before that was ever something I was even remotely aware of. With that being said, when I did find it out, I will not watch any more of his the Jeepers Creepers films. I won't. But the first two are two films I've seen, and I can't unsee them. And they're two of my favorite films. The first one's a classic. The second one, I think, is really good. And I think them being shared on the bus, I think that the way it was set up, and I think this is a really good creature feature / monster movie. I love what they did. I love the film. And I do understand the problem some people have and can't get past with Victor, is it Salva? But like I said, I mean, it's not that I'm coming from a place where, you know, I don't understand. I was abused as a kid. I spent 5 years in law enforcement. I have a better idea than most people. And I'm not saying that makes me better. I'm not saying that, well, if I can get over it, so can you. Everyone's trauma is different. Everyone feels differently. But I don't think about the director. I think about the actors. I think about the story. I think about everyone else. And some people can't do that, and I understand that. But with that being said, for those of you that remember this movie or seen this movie, I think this is a really good sequel to a excellent, masterful creature feature. And if you can, and if you can get past the behind the camera stuff, go appreciate the stuff that's in front of the camera. Next, Pet Sematary, specifically Part 2. Obviously, I saw this movie when I was very young, way too young, probably. And I've always had a special place in my heart for that movie. Now, this one isn't as there's more. This was a more crude. It's a little bit more. It's a little darker, and there's a lot more with the cemetery, like a lot more. Um, but I do think the characters are interesting. I do think the story is well done. I do think that now one thing I would say about this movie, there is assault of the physical kind that is sexual in nature. So that's something that is a trigger. This film does have that. Um, there's also violence against animals. So it's almost like that checklist of like triggers that this movie possess. But I do think it's a well made film. It's a good horror film, and there are some proper disturbing scenes, sequences in this movie. So it definitely deserves a watch. I'm not gonna sit here and say it's as good as the original. I think the original is a better film. I do think this is worth seeing. It is a worthy sequel to um, a really really good horror film. And with certain movies that are so good, that a sequel is almost incomprehensible. Like you're like, there's no way they can make a sequel to that. At least not successfully. And there's a movie that was made, and I had my doubts. I have my reservations of whether or not it's going to be any good. But damn. That's Psycho 2. That's all the other sequels as well, but Psycho 2 specifically. This movie is amazing. If Psycho 1 is a 10 out of 10, which easily it is, this is at least a 9.5 out of 10. Psycho 2 is one of the most improbable horror sequels ever, in the sense that it followed up a masterpiece and held its own. And following the release of Norman Bates and how Anthony Perkins plays him and how he teeters that line that he's trying to change and be a better person, but he's slowly being pushed. And the reasoning behind it, the person who's pushing him and trying to get him to relapse, so to speak, is so clever. It makes so much sense. And I just, damn, this is a good movie. And if you're like me, you haven't seen it yet because you're like, I don't know. I mean, Psycho's a masterpiece. Is this sequel even worth? This sequel's worth your time. This sequel is worth your time. It is great. I'm gonna do these two movies together because these are two of the rare films and rare occurrence when the first film in a franchise is underwhelming. Not terrible, just underwhelming. And a sequel comes out that is better in every imaginable way. And that is Annabelle Creation and Ouija Origin of Evil. Or Ouija. And who directed? I know Mike Flanagan did this one. David F. Sandberg directed Annabelle Creation, and like I said, Mike Flanagan directed Origin of Evil. And these are two films that the first Annabelle and the first Ouija film were it was very basic. It wasn't anything exciting, wasn't anything really about them that was special. And they came, they went, but they did well. So sequels were announced, and everyone kind of rolled their eyes and said, "Oh shit, here we go again." And to our surprise, both these movies came out, and not only did they come out in a way good, were they well done, they surpassed the originals in every imaginable way. Both these movies are two instances where the first one came out was only okay, second one came out and was just way better in every I believe both of these, yeah, both of these are prequels too, funny enough. So two films came out underwhelmed, and then two prequels came out and just were better in every imaginable way. Next, Species 2. I'm a big fan of Species 1. I love that movie. I think it's so good. Um, I think it's such a clever concept. An alien that came down here to mate, and she can like even that one scene, the first one where she kills that dude, and they're like, "Oh, he was a diabetic," and she could smell like he had some type of like you know genetic issue. Um, I thought it was so clever, and this one just amps that up. Now they made another Eve, and um, like a senator's son who's an astronaut gets infected, and he comes down. Of course, he's just a stud, so he's just, and there's so much more violence in this, but so much more sex too. This is I would almost label this an erotic horror sci-fi film. Because it is all over it is. I would almost say it's like a almost a soft core. Not quite, but not too far off either. But the performances in this are really good. Um, the aliens are all really awesome, and it it took everything in Species and it's amped it up. So if you like Species, this just turns that dial all the way up. Now, I haven't seen the other ones, but Species 2 is definitely a worthy successor to a cult classic sci-fi horror film. Well, I guess we're gonna have to just get this one over with. The Blair Witch 2. Book of Shadows. A lot of people hate this movie. Like, they hate this movie. I really like it. I don't know. It's just something about it, the way it was made, the characters. I enjoyed it. I had a fun time with it. Now, I'm not going to sit here and try to convince you this is a great movie. I'm not sitting here to try to convince you that it's just as good or better than the original. I'm not going to sit here to try to convince you that this movie is even a good movie. There's something about it. It has this, I don't know. It has this quality to it that I just find endearing. I enjoyed this film. Um, I will admit it's not as good as the original. The original is a classic, a masterpiece, and I'll die on that hill. This one, I think, was just a really fun, different direction. I look at this kind of like the way I look at like Friday Part 5 or Nightmare on Elm Street 2 or Halloween 3. It's in the franchise, it's just a different, it tries something different. And for that, I give it credit. Like, they knew what they did with the first one, they couldn't replicate. It was a perfect place, perfect time, perfect circumstances. So they went with something completely different. And did it work totally? No. But do I think it's still good? Do I think it still has some merit? Do I still think that overall the attempt was there and I give them credit for that? An A for effort, if you will? Yeah, for me anyway, it works in that regard. They try to do something different. It's like Halloween 3 did. It's like Friday 5. It's like Elm Street Part 2. They did something different. It didn't totally work. It wasn't the best, but I do think what they did here was entertaining, and I I appreciate that they tried to do something different. Even if it didn't totally work, I still enjoyed it. Next is Purge Anarchy. I like this film because the first Purge was really a self-contained home invasion film. And we knew other stuff was going on, but that was self-contained. And then we get part two, which took us out to the streets, which said, hey, let's show what happens on the streets during the purge. Let's show what happens during the purge everywhere else outside of this, home. And damn, it was good. It was entertaining. It was disturbing. And it was badass. This is one of the best. Well, the first one was, like I said, a home invasion, self-contained film. This is much more of a action horror film. I almost compared this to like a Escape from New York type of film. It's just badass. The kills in here are gnarly and just wicked and bloody, and I do believe what's his name in here? Oh God, the actor, I forget his name. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's not in this one. I thought he may have been, but why is it stuck? Oh, there you go. I want to see if I'm correct. Yeah, Frank Grillo. He's in this one. He's just a badass. He's so awesome. And yeah, so he's in this movie, and no, he gives a great performance. He definitely plays the hardened badass savior type really well. This is a fun film. So if you like The Purge, the first one, or didn't like the first one, give this one a shot. It's I don't want to say it's better than it, but it's a very different film. It went in a completely different direction than what the first one did. Finally, that movie I saw when I was very young, probably way too young, but it's a film I really enjoy, very near and dear to my heart. That Pumpkinhead 2. With this movie, the first one's a better film. I mean, look, Lance Henriksen, him having his soul eaten away as Pumpkinhead is killing those teens. That you just can't beat that. But what this does, with this Pumpkinhead, version of Pumpkinhead, and he's brutal in this. Like, there's one scene, there's like a couple, and he like skewers them on a spear, and he throws them, and like they're like facing each other on the spear. Oh, brutal. Or one where like this guy goes in like the barn, this guy, all these chickens, and the chicken like plucking his eye, like pecking his eyes out. Oh, Pumpkinhead goes hard in this movie. He's not fucking around. Pumpkinhead goes hard. He's kicking ass, and I think this is a very worthy sequel to a horror classic. I mean, Pumpkinhead is a horror classic. I think that movie is comfortably, and being one of the better horror creature features of all time, particularly being a unique one. The design of Pumpkinhead, and this one does it justice. This is a really, it's different too. It's a different approach, and I can appreciate when they do something different. When they say, hey, well, we're going to go a different route, or try a different storyline, or do something different with this film than the first one. I can always appreciate that, because it's so easy to fall back on the first one that made it successful, as opposed to like this and doing something completely different, and like I said, when I rank this as one of the most of these anyway, really, except for me, Doctor Sleep and um, Psycho 2. But would I rank any of these as like the best horror sequels of all time outside of those two? No, not necessarily, but I definitely can appreciate and say that I like when they do something different. I like when they take an idea and a concept and they make a successful film, and in the sequel they say, hey, we're going to take this and we're going to try something a little bit different. We're going to try to do something that the first one didn't do. And for that, I can appreciate it. For that, I can give it its props. So, Pumpkinhead 2, and that is my list. Like I said, all these movies, I'm going to sit here and say that they're, you know, um, amazing films. But certainly, I think they're underrated and underappreciated sequels that, while varying their they vary in how good they are. One thing they do have in common, and one unique thread, is that they all, I think, are somewhat underappreciated, underseen, and under talked about when it comes to, good horror sequels, or at least horror sequels that took a chance, maybe missed the mark, but you can appreciate the effort. You can appreciate that they did something different. They did something that was unique, and for that alone, you can appreciate what they were trying to do, at least. And for me, I can say that for all these films. But that being said, that is the end. I hope everyone, you know, will go and say, which one of these. Tell me which one of these that you've seen. Um, which one do you agree or don't agree with? What do you think is the underseen horror sequel that people don't that you don't see people talk about that much? I'd love to know some ones that maybe you think are should be on the list. This is mine, and not in any particular order, just um, ones that I feel are worthy of their place as um, horror sequels that went in a different direction, that tried something different, that tried to do something different, and try to be something different than what the successor did. And like I said, at least in the case of um, Ouija and Annabelle, they they actually did better than the original film. No, I mean, saying that the original films were very underwhelming in those particular cases, but at least they heard what we said as fans and said, you know what, we hear you. We're going to do something different. We're going to try to go and do better. So I would at least give them credit for that, because they could have said, oh yeah, we're going to give you another, not even try, we're going to give you another shitty film or another underwhelming film, and just take it or leave it. No, instead they try to go, made an effort to make it better. And you know what? I appreciate that. I appreciate what um, Mike Flanagan and was David Sandberg did with their respected sequels or prequels, I guess, if you're getting specific. But yeah, that's my list for the day. And until next time, be safe.